Hello and welcome back to Why Such a Fuss. We have Kate Janet again from Janet HR Solutions with us. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Christina. How are you?
I'm all right. How about you? Great to have you here.
Yes, I'm good. Thank you. Great to be back.
Excellent. So, Kate, in today's episode, we are going to tackle what activities, including training, should be part of an induction process.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, no,
Yes.
I get asked that a lot with clients, so that's a great topic to cover. So inductions are a process where a business welcomes their new starter or new recruit to the business or organisation. Dependent on the industry and role, obviously induction programs can vary in terms of the content and the duration. Some inductions can be completed in a few hours, some over a few days, some even over a few weeks, or even the first few months of employment. But typically they always start on day one. So day one of the candidate being new to the business or organisation and new in their role. So it can obviously involve lots of different parts. Initially, I always suggest to clients to ensure that all of the personal data is collected. So the relevant new starter forms to be compliant with HMRC, P45 from previous role, all the personal data collected in terms of next of kin, doctors. So if there were to be any issue on that day one, you've got a point of contact in an emergency situation to contact on behalf of that employee, because obviously as a new employee, you may not know anything about them outside of obviously the previous interviews. So it's important to have that on file initially in case there were to be an emergency where you'd need that. Obviously there's certain information that if you haven't already completed and issued the written statement of particulars, contract of employment, if that hasn't been sent prior, that is a day one right now to have that in writing. So we'd need to ensure that any information that was required to draft and issue that is in place, and then that can be issued. And then we would move on to policies and procedures. If the company or organisation's got a handbook, that should be shared with the employee, the necessary health and safety, fire evacuation, all of the HSE side of things, that should all be covered so the employee feels safe from day one. And then really it's moving on to sort of the job specific element of the induction. So whether that be a training program, any shadowing, mentoring, if the employee was going to be assigned a buddy within the organisation for that first initial period of employment, that would all be discussed and put in place. So the employee is aware from day one, this is the plan. The organisation knows that they're following that process and can then monitor and review that as it goes. And then obviously from your side, Christina, I guess the GDPR training element is essential within that first period as well, which you probably want to say a bit more about.
Yes. So, so absolutely. So GDPR training is key. Any new joiner into an organization, whether it's an employee, a volunteer, even, a contractor like a self-employed, they will need to be provided with GDPR training within the first month of joining the organization. GDPR training needs to be part of an induction process. The GDPR training needs to be relevant to the type of role that the individual is going to be performing. So, for example, if we take, a garage door installer type of company, the surveyors and the installers, while they do process some personal data, it will not be to the same extent as someone in the customer service role within the same company. So, the roles are different. The type of data or personal data that they're going to be processing is different. The GDPR training needs to be tailored to that, to reflect that. I would say that as a minimum, within that first month of employment is to provide the individual with some essential and basic GDPR training. And then you can always top it up after the probation period, for example, with something that it's more robust, more specific to the role. But at least as a minimum, you need to provide them with the basic.
Excellent. And that's something you can obviously help with.
Of course, yes. That can be done in different ways. If you are a large organization, for example, and you are bringing in, more than one new employee, sometimes you can bring in, 10 or 20, you could do a workshop where you have them all in one room and get it dusted in a couple of hours. If you are a smaller organization where your intake of employees is much more ad hoc or spread out, for a longer period of time, once or twice a year, for example, as you're growing, then maybe an e-learning training might be more appropriate. So there are different ways of doing it, but I would suggest and recommend that an organization have that in their budget and have that as part of their onboarding process under the HR umbrella. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's brilliant that there's obviously the different levels of support and training you can offer to meet different organizations' budgets and requirements. No, brilliant.
Yeah. And then obviously, again, from a training perspective, there is the obligation to the organization to provide with the GDPR refresher training to everybody within the organization. And again, this can be done in different ways. It can be workshops, it can be learning, it can be assessment, it can be, a mock exercise. So it can be done in different ways. Very often what I do with my client, I create a GDPR training strategy plan so that every year is different and the employees don't know. So that means I've got to keep up fresh with their knowledge, which is good, actually, how it should be.
Excellent.
Well, thank you very much, Kate, for joining us again. And
thank you, as always.
Yes, see you again soon.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Thanks, Christina. Take care.